All right, so you've read about the settlement efforts at Jamestown, and if the primary motivation there was profit, the primary motivation for the great Puritan migration to the New England colonies was piety. Between 1620 and 1640, tens of thousands of Puritans left England to follow their faith in a manner of their own choosing. So let's start with getting a clear idea of who the Puritans were. A simple definition is that they were English Protestants who, like all Protestants, had broken with the Catholic Church and as a result of the Reformation. However, what separates Puritans from other English Protestants is their zeal for reform. These are folks who aren't interested in half measures. They want nothing short of a purification of the Church from Catholic influence. Remember, when Henry VIII had broken with the Catholic Church and established the Anglican Church in England, his motives weren't entirely spiritual. Consequently, the Church of England still retained a strong hint of Catholicism. This had continued with Henry's heirs, Elizabeth I, and later James I and James II. Within the Puritan community, the perception that heretical elements remained within the Church forced something of a crisis. By the early 17th century, some Puritans believed England was beyond salvation, and the only hope was to build a pure church outside of the country itself. This group of Puritans were known as separatists, and they sought to establish a godly community independent of England. In 1608, a small group of separatists had actually left England for Holland, and later in 1620, led by William Bradford, they would leave Holland and resettle off the coast of present-day Massachusetts. There they founded the Plymouth Colony, put their names to the Mayflower Compact, and have lived on in the popular imagination of Americans ever since as the Pilgrims of Thanksgiving Day lore. Now, as notable as this small colony of religious dissenters was, I want to emphasize the arrival of a second wave of Puritans who settled in the same region as the Pilgrims, but actually had a far greater impact on the development of the New England colonies. Not all Puritans were separatists. In fact, the majority of Puritans were what we refer to as non-separatists. Non-separatist Puritans believed that England was still in moral peril, but it could be redeemed. And during the first few decades of the 17th century, many of these non-Puritans, separatist Puritans, worked for reform by influencing Parliament and the monarchy and by voicing their own dissatisfaction through their own congregations. But the turning point is going to come in 1624 with the ascension of James II. As James II grew less and less patient with both Puritans and Parliament, his suppression of both was the writing on the wall for many non-separatists, who realized they too were going to have to leave England to better serve God. In 1630, a large group of Puritans led by John Winthrop, who was a British minister and lawyer and prominent Puritan, they found the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Now again, these separatists are not looking to isolate themselves. Instead, they believed they could build what Winthrop described as a city upon a hill. A godly community, yes, but a godly community that would serve as a beacon of light and model for both England and all wayward Christians. By 1642, some 12,000 Puritans had left England for the Massachusetts Bay Colony in what was the largest migration of English subjects to that point. It's this group that's going to shape the development of the New England colonies. The question of how successful they were is a discussion for another module.